WBNE.
Hello and welcome to episode 175, all about the Silmarillion, Akallabeth, being the 175th part of That's What I'm Tolkien About. Hello, my name is Mary Clay. If that's too complicated for you, just call me MC. I've been experiencing the world of J.R.R. Tolkien for the first time, and this week we are back with the Silmarillion, and I'm only regretting it a little bit. Today I am joined by Morgan, aka Silmaspens. She's a wonderful artist on Instagram who I like all of her stuff. It's so creative, and I'm going to stop rambling and let her say hello.
Hi there. Hi, it's great to be on. Thanks for reaching out. I totally love your Tolkien memes, and I love that you are going in and just experiencing all this for the first time. I think that's awesome. You don't get a lot of newbies like that.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Not a lot of newbies want to read the Silmarillion, and I think there's a reason for that.
I know, it is tough, but it's so great when you actually tackle it. I love it so much more than Lord of the Rings now. It's my favorite, but yeah, I was definitely daunted the first couple attempts to get it. So it takes a minute, but once you get it, it's totally worth it. So welcome back to the Silmarillion. Happy to be here with you.
Yes, we took it ended up being a 2-month break from the Silmarillion because of Rings of Power. Real quick, do you have any, thoughts about Rings, like a positive or negative or anything, feelings about Rings of Power?
I have
if
mixed
you watched,
feelings.
I don't know. I just kind of assumed that everyone was watching, so.
I did watch it, yeah. I liked how they did Numenor. I don't really like how they did Eregion. Just kind of mixed stuff. I don't want to be a fan that just completely hated it or just completely went overboard and liked it. Certain concepts I thought were cool. I'm one of those people. I'm like, why did they give the boy elf short hair? But I mean, other than that, I could go off on it. So I'll just leave it at that. It was a mixed experience for me.
Yeah, I think that's generally that's how I felt. I think that's how a lot of people felt, which is kind of it's nice that we got to a point with Rings of Power in the fandom where I for several months, even before it started, it felt like I had to be positive so that I could combat all of the hate that it was getting. So I felt like I had to be but I feel like we're at a point now where we all have these really valid criticisms and stuff that lead to more interesting and open discussions rather than just being the writing is trash, it sucks,
Oh my gosh, yeah, totally. I know that was definitely a thing. I didn't want to be too vocal about not really loving it, just because it's okay, if you're gonna hate the show because it's oh, a female elf is in a leading role, it's there's so many other valid reasons to not like the show. Why isn't Celebrimbor friends with the dwarves? Why is it Elrond? I don't know, just kind of nitpicky valid stuff. But yeah, it's okay, these people are mouth breathing dorks. We're not gonna associate with that. So I just try to keep it on the down low.
Yes. Why don't you tell me and the listeners a little bit about your background with Tolkien and how you got introduced to it, the things that you've watched or read, etc., all of that.
Fun stuff. So my first ever experience with Tolkien, I remember this. I was 6 years old, and my dad had rented The Two Towers from Blockbuster, and he was like, Morgan, come check this out. So I went in and I was watching it because it was a little too graphic for little old me, but he showed me where the Ents were walking for the first time, and he's like, check out the trees are walking. And I was like, that is the coolest thing I've ever seen. That just completely blew my mind. And so then a couple of years later, when I think it was my 10th Christmas, he got my little brother and I the trilogy for Peter Jackson, the OGs. So we watched that and I just got completely hooked. And so it was pretty much just one of my standard movies, and then games for the next couple years of my childhood was just Lord of the Rings. I could always play Lord of the Rings, and I just loved it. Then in high school, I attempted the Hobbit movies came out, and so that kind of reignited my interest and my love of Tolkien, even though the Hobbit movies weren't that awesome. I'm like, that's cool. Then after that, I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna attempt the Silmarillion. And then it took me, I think I didn't even quite get the Silmarillion until college. I started it in high school, but you only like most people only get as far as like the creation story, like the I Knew Lindy, and they're like, oh my gosh, that's my favorite part. And that's like low key been like a gauge of mine to see if someone's like completed the Silmarillion. It's like, okay, if your favorite story is the creation story, I don't think you got past the creation story, because
Oh, interesting.
so there is like so much more. And like I've only been proven wrong like once, but like usually it's just like, yeah, I just love, like the Varda lady, she's really cool. And it's like, okay. Um but yeah, so then it's been just like a big muse for me for a long time. One of my coworkers for the longest time was a big Tolkien fan too. So he started a podcast and I helped him out with that, just with like coming up with art and stuff. And
oh, what's that podcast? I need to write it down on my list.
It's the Talking Tolkien Book Club.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, not to come on here and like plug a rival podcast. They finished.
Please.
So
I learned long ago that like the way to do this is not to be like, this is the best and only Tolkien podcast out there. Is to be like,
exist.
Everyone has different viewpoints and different vibes, and like my vibes are very like chaotic compared to a lot of most of the other podcasts out there. So like I learned that like the best way to do this is you need to, and this is also just general advice for any other creators out there, befriend all these people and collaborate with them, and it makes things just so much more enjoyable to like interact in these spaces together, rather than against each other.
Oh, for sure. I've really loved the Tolkien community. I used to be, and I still kind of am a little bit on like the shyer side, just because I don't love getting into like drama and discourse, but I have made quite a few, I would say, friends just via like the community. Like, oh my gosh, like Fingon's your favorite? Like, that's great. I love Mithros or whatever. Like, just like, like elementary school stuff. Like, oh my gosh, that's my favorite character. Like, that's my favorite character too. Let's be best friends about it.
Yes.
So it's great. It's a great community for sure.
I was saying, like, when I was first starting the Silmarillion, eventually, no, I think it was a couple stories into the Silmarillion, but I am terrible at doing it now, but originally on the Instagram account for the podcast, I started doing Fan Art Friday and started sharing like, because there's so many wonderful artists and so many like really cool interpretations of characters and scenes and even like things that like were not adapted into the movies, and so you don't get to have that visual representation. So I love seeing fan art, and your fan art of, I don't even remember the names of the characters anymore, god, it was Maedhros and one of the Finns, I can't remember which one.
Fingon, good job.
Fingon. I mean, like, here we are almost at like basically the end of the Silmarillion, and I still will not ever get Finrod and Fingon straight.
Hey, you got it. Once you get it, it'll just be like euphoric for you.
Oh
but that's you're totally valid right now, though, sis.
Oh my gosh. But anyway, yeah, you drew out the scene of Fingon like getting ready to kill Maedhros when he's been captured, and then like the eagle swooping in and stuff. And this was like my first introduction actually to the Silmarillion, because someone had like retweeted it, and I saw it like before I'd even started it, and I saw it and I was like, whoa, what is this about? That looks crazy. So it's been really helpful and fun for me to have like your art to go to as I've been reading the Silmarillion and see it's like a picture book version of the Silmarillion for me, and like it's nice to have these illustrations. So listeners, if you're a very like visual person and you need to like imagine these characters or something, definitely go check out all of Morgan's art. Cannot recommend it enough. What was it about the Silmarillion that you were like, I need to like draw out all, because like there's so much that you could illustrate of Tolkien's works. What was it about the Silmarillion versus like focusing exclusively on like Lord of the Rings or The Hobbit or something that made you be like, no, I'm going to draw these really obscure characters that all start with the letter F?
I know, right? Well, first off, thank you. That just like is so crazy that like I helped you just kind of like get into this. So that's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Didn't wasn't anticipating that when I'm like, no, I don't have never seen a comic of this. I'm gonna go for it. But like with the Silmarillion, I think what it is it is just so like big in scale, and there are just like so many characters, and there's so many little stories. There's just something in there. Like if you want like an epic romance, you can do with Baron and Luthien. If you want just like straight up tragedy, you can go with most of it, like
you can go with the rest of it,
most of it. And it just kind of leaves so much creative wiggle room because Tolkien is so broad but specific at the same time. I don't know. It's kind of like it is kind of like a very biblical way how he writes the Silmarillion, where it's like 30 pages pass in a paragraph, and like a character gets like two maybe a line of just like, oh, he had bronze hair and was stern and fair or whatever, just like, and that's like the description of the character. So it leaves a lot of like jumping off points creatively, which I really like, where it's not so specific that you're just constrained, where it's like, okay, like Gandalf's got to look like this, and he's got to have the hat and the big black boots and like a long white beard, where it's like, okay, I'm gonna make an old wizard, but I can make that old wizard look pretty much however I want as long as they're wearing blue, you know? So there's more prompts than there is just like, I guess, I don't know, like just absolutely rigid, it has to look like this. So probably not the best description, but that's kind of what I really like about it. It's just nice for me just to be like, okay, you know what, here's a character that's never gotten love before and they kind of seem really cool, so let's draw, not that he has it, but it's like let's draw like Maglung or something, I don't know. So yeah, I definitely like that into Silmarillion for sure. And there's just like so much to work with, which is really nice. So you can really explore like different character like concepts just for like their looks. It's like, what did the Noldor look like? What did the Noldor and Beleriand look like? And that's just like one group of people. And then like, what do these branches of elves look like? Or these dwarves or this city or this branch of men? So it just leaves like a lot of creative prompting. I think that's just the biggest thing. And like story wise, I really like the tragedy of it all. So I just kind of grabbed me and I haven't really looked back since.
Very cool. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of material to work with. So
it is kind of like its own little euphoria when you actually do get everybody straight. You're just like, oh, okay, all right. That's Galadriel's second oldest brother, and that's her third cousin, and this is so and so. You know, it's kind of fun. But if you really want to geek out,
I feel like I know like I have like the gist of the characters down, but like I can't always remember specifically like with like I was saying, like I don't remember exactly which one went to go rescue Maedhros, but like I know that one of them did, you know, and I know that, you know, like, so I know these events that happened, but I do have trouble remembering throughout being like when you get like towards the end and it mentions like this character and then it's like, okay, but what did he do? Like what all has he done? And you have to like go back in your brain and remember all this. So
yeah, that's totally fair.
Let's dive in now. So this is Akallabeth. There is Akallabeth and then another section after this called, ironically, Of the Third Age and the Rings of Power. I understand that I'm reading this after the first season of Rings of Power. It's fine, good. You know? And also, I enjoyed being able to watch the show and be like, and have that kind of be my first introduction to Numenor. I enjoyed that a lot because I was like, ooh, what is this place? Like, what's going on here? Who are these characters? It definitely made for a more, I don't know, I think like a more authentic viewing of the first season, to be like, I don't know who Pharazôn is. I don't know who I thought Miriel was a original character to Rings of Power. I think I have a feeling like a lot of what they did with her character was original. And they've like diverged considering the very like brief glimpses we've gotten of her in this first half of Akallabeth, that like, you know, they take those liberties with those characters. But yeah, I like enjoyed not knowing everything there was to know about Numenor and everything before watching the show. So I guess there's no turning back now. And in 2 years when the next season comes out, I'll know more.
Oh my gosh,
so.
Right. Just like, no way. I know, I do like too, it's like the nice thing is I'm sure you've seen it, it's just, again, like in the book, how broad everything is. So a TV show can have creative liberties where it's like they're still working within canon, and it's like, you know what, let's like give this character a personality, like maybe let's like make her a little bit more like assertive and dominant, or a little bit like more on like this like steady side, like I don't know, because Tolkien doesn't write it, he doesn't specify it. So I actually did enjoy their characterization of Muriel quite a bit on the show. I like how they did her quite a bit. And just yeah, the like the overall look of Numenor, I'm like, okay, I can get behind like this like kind of like Etruscan, like Atlantean vibe, and it looks cool. So yeah, I think that's a great introduction for you.
Mm-hmm. I kept saying throughout the first season, whenever it was playing, the Numenor theme, the score, that was like one of my, aside from like probably some of the Harfoot songs and themes, the Numenor theme was like one of my favorites, where it felt like this is like I am identifying this with this group of people and this like geographic area, and like I get a feel for, I feel like a form of connection with it. So
like
I need to
hype music.
Yes. Oh my God. I need to message or somehow hit up the composer Bear McCreary, and be like, hey, you want to come on my podcast and just like tell me like everything you know about the score of Rings of Power? Yeah. Like I'll just like sit and listen to you talk. Like, can you just do that?
Sounds good.
So we are, I am splitting up these last two sections of the Silmarillion into two parts each, just to make sure that we don't bite off more than we can chew. So this week we are reading the first half of the Akallabeth. If you are reading along, it's about 10 pages. You'll, hear when we stop. And then, next week we'll finish up the Akallabeth. So it's called Akallabeth, the Downfall of Numenor. So before we even know what Numenor is, they're already telling us that it's going to fail and it's going to fall.
Womp womp.
Yeah. We get a little bit of a recap of like, it's kind of, it literally feels like you're watching a TV show, and it has the recap, the like 1 to 2 minute recap at the beginning.
Previously on.
Yes. So previously on the Silmarillion, there's this big war with Morgoth. Of course, we all remember that. And the men that were fighting with the elves against Morgoth, and remember, the men are the second children of Iluvatar. They're the second child. They are not the favorite. Actually, I guess if we were like going in order, it would be like the elves, the men are the middle child, and then like the younger forgotten quote unquote child are the dwarves that Iluvatar did not intend to exist.
Womp womp. We still were somehow born first.
Yes, I talk about that all the time. I'm like, the firstborns, but they are not. Yeah, the elves were supposed to be the firstborn, but they did not come around for years later.
It's like, we're going to put you on ice for a minute, and then you guys can pop into the world.
Yes, yeah, just going to like cryogenically freeze you.
Don't worry about it. I'm God.
Don't question it, yeah. So when the men came, they were obviously like throughout Middle Earth, and some of them had heard rumors of this light, this good force in the west, and so they start traveling over, and that's how some of them come into Beleriand, and they befriend the elves, and they help the elves, and these are the, it was 3 families of men, and they are known as the Edain, and in the war, they fought with the elves, they fought against Morgoth, and so they are rewarded essentially for their valor, for their valor. And they are given Numenor. It's a land that it's really funny because all the Valar are like, so how should we deal with the men? Like, what do we do? Like, what should we do here? Because some of them were on Morgoth's side and were taken over by his darkness and deceit, So, like, what should we do? And they're like, well, let's put all the good ones on this island and then forbid them to ever leave it, basically.
Kinda. It's like they literally give them like a gold star, but it's a star island instead. They're like, good job, guys. Here you go. Just
Yeah,
come hang
good
out.
job. Here's a pretty island. And there's like a whole description of like oh shoot, who's the ocean one?
Ulmo.
Olmo, that's it. Yeah,
Oh wait.
Olmo.
Actually, OC helps out for
Oh, okay,
Numenor.
okay. Yeah, this is where it gets confusing because they're name
Sorry.
dropping a bunch of the Maiar, who are remember the lesser Valar.
Yeah,
This is
the
where I feel
helpers.
insane.
I know. There are quite a bit. There are quite a few of them. I know I was reading it because I haven't read this in a minute either, but I wanted to catch up on it. And I was like, oh yeah. OC's the one that did that. Like that wasn't Ulmo. And I'm
Yeah.
like, that's so funny because it's like I don't know, it's just one of those things where it's like, yeah, I'm gonna make this whole character. He's gonna be known for being like, oh, he's gonna make storms and stuff, but randomly he's gonna like make Numenor.
Yeah, like
Yeah, that's cool.
sometimes he's in a good mood. And
Yeah,
and he's
that's his
not, you know,
character
he's
trait.
not cranky. He's had his nap. It's kind of like when you were a kid and you wanted something, so you had to catch your parents in a good mood before you asked them for it, you know?
They're like, hey bud, how are you feeling today? Would you want to help us with an island? Totally
Yeah.
cool if you don't. God.
So yeah, Ose is involved. Aule helps to, you know, forge and create some of the, I guess, the topography of it or whatever. Yavanna like fertilizes the land and, you know, puts trees and you know, plants and everything on it. So they're all working together to create this really beautiful land for their favorite men to stay on for the Edain. And it's like in between Middle Earth and Valinor, but I think it says that it's like a little bit closer to Valinor than it is to Middle Earth. But the trick is that they tell them they're not supposed to come and be with them in Valinor, and they are not supposed to sail so far westward that they can no longer see Numenor. So there's like kind of this boundary that they're drawing, and they're like, we're going to give you this place, but yeah, you just like stay over there. Stay there. Don't come see us ever.
We'll come to you, maybe, if you're
good. Yeah. Don't call me. We'll call you.
Don't worry. Just hate house guests. It's fine.
Meanwhile, they are aware that even though they've defeated Morgoth, they've thrown him into like the void, essentially. And like he's gone, but the damage is still done. There's still a lot of evil and darkness growing. I love how I've talked about it before, but Tolkien writes evil and darkness in really beautiful ways and like really descriptive. And that's why like I love the descriptions of Ungoliant and Shelob because it's so descriptive and it's so just like flush with imagery. But he says, yet the seeds that he had planted still grew and sprouting, bearing evil fruit if any would tend them. Yeah. And of course, also we know that Tolkien loves a nature metaphor for anything.
He's got to slide it in there.
He's a nature boy.
He's like, how do I describe horrific evil in the world? A tree.
A tree.
That's gonna get it across.
How do I describe good in the world? Also a tree.
It's a mixed bag. Trees are all encompassing.
Yeah.
And I do love that. It's like, and it gives the like, it's not just Morgoth. It's not like you can just blame every evil act just straight up on Morgoth. It's like adding that last bit, if any would tend to them. It's like there's other people willingly choosing to like keep that going, keep that evil in the world, keep like tending to it. And I love that. It's not like, oh, darn Morgoth, he's still corrupting the youth. It's like kind of, but he's not doing all the heavy lifting. It's like evil's still in the world, but it's not just because he's not, you know, just because he's in it. He's not in it and it's still there, you know. It's like, okay, all of our problems were solved because we got rid of Morgoth. It's like, nope.
No, we still have to deal with the people left behind.
Yeah, do love that. It's not like, oh yeah, the day is saved, we're good, woohoo.
So a lot of what we're going to talk about with Numenor, if you have watched Rings of Power, is going to sound very familiar because I think they did a good job of like incorporating this and like showing, like we see where, you know, obviously where we are in the show, we're like with the last generation of Númenorians before it's destroyed, I'm assuming. So we're kind of like at the end. So we've seen like, okay, this is where they end up. So what's described in the Akallabeth is, you know, showing us the foundation of Numenor and kind of like how we got there. And also we know from the Lord of the Rings, because Aragorn is one of the Dunedain. They say a lot. That's like, you know, he has like a million different names, and that's like one of them is like, you know, King of the Dunedain or whatever. I don't know.
What is that?
And that is it's just a different, it's the Grey Elven name for Númenorians, who are the kings among men. So again, these are like top-notch, best men ever. It's, if we're, I use Harry Potter to make a lot of equivalencies and comparisons and stuff. It's kind of like the pureblood wizards. Where like the Númenorians are the pureblood wizard equivalent of men, and they're like the best of the best. At least like that's what the Valar say, and the Valar are very like biased beings. They're very like biased beings. So
it's a little bit. They're like, we don't show favoritism at all.
Here's an island for our favorite people.
Oh my gosh. And you guys are like the coolest ever. And you're all so tall. We love that about you.
Yes, it mentions, that they're like the tallest among men. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. Reminder that Aragorn is canonically like, I don't know, like 7 foot tall or something.
He's super tall. Got those long legs for striding with.
Yeah, striding. Yes. Yeah, so like it starts out going great. We also do get a little reminder about Elrond and Elros. And again, like something that like they kind of like briefly touched on in the show too, which I was kind of like surprised that we got like a little bit into that background.
We got a tapestry.
Yes, that little tapestry. It's in the finale, so huge spoiler if you have not watched Rings of Power and you haven't watched the finale, but it's right after Halbrand reveals himself to Galadriel and she like falls in the river, and Elrond like picks her up, and she thinks that Elrond might be like Sauron in disguise again or something, or manipulating him, and so she's like, when was the first time we met or whatever, and Elrond is like, you gave me water like right after I had been orphaned, basically. And like the backstory of that is just so sad and depressing.
I know, but I'm like, wait, just erasing and Mathros and Maglor, which I'm sure they didn't have the rights to that, which I get it. But
I was wondering, I was like, oh, does he mean like, oh, you gave me, like, you met me right after, was it, because like Maglor and Mathros like kind of, you know, I guess abandon. Do they? I can't remember if it talks about like what happened to Elrond and Elros in the time between like, you know, after the war. Like, did Mathros and Maglor, were they like, okay, go along with your other friends your age? Like, what did they do? I can't remember.
Sort of. So long story is they take them, they have them for a couple years, and the kinship grows between Maglor and Elrond and Elros, where and I think it might be inflated a little bit in like the fan community, but it's called like the kidnap fam. So it's like, they're just like they're like a little happy fam. It's so cute. I subscribe to it. I like it. And then when Mathros and Maglor, like after the end of the War of Wrath, when they get the Silmarils back, they're like, oh man, like gotta get those Silmarils, but we can't bring the kids into it. So then they send them to be with Gil-galad. So after they're with Mathros and Maglor, they go to Gil-galad, which is one of those like nitpicky things. But it's like, okay, they probably didn't have the rights for it, so it's okay. Makes the sting a little less.
Yeah. So I was wondering when he said that in the show, I was like, oh my gosh, was that like after he had been abandoned like for the second time in his life? I'm like, that's so sad.
Elrond's been through it. I know, that was like kind of like, again with the show, when Galadriel's trying to like one up Elrond with like suffering, like, oh, I've seen so much more than you, Elrond. It's like, no, he's been through a lot. He's been through a lot, Galadriel.
I learned this glorious joke that I had no idea was a thing. Of everyone just saying "Mum's a bird, Dad's a star." Oh yeah. And I had no idea like that was a thing, and it made me laugh so much.
Oh,
Just
no,
mom's
it's
a
great.
bird, dad's a star. And like there were little touches of that during season
Oh,
1.
Elrond.
He's definitely had his fair share of trauma, and one of them being that to like pull us back into the Silmarillion.
Get back in
One
there.
of them being that his twin brother, they were given the choice of because they're half elven, their mom's a bird, dad's a star, because their mom was, human. No. Yeah, their mom was human. No.
They're
Yes.
half elf.
Yes, they are half elven. Their dad is like pure half elven because his mom was an elf and his dad was definitely a human. That's Irendil. I had to go through the whole family tree in my head.
Just go for it.
Oh my gosh. Anyway, they were given the choice of you can be, with the mortal men or you can be with the firstborn. And Elrond decided that he was going to be with the firstborn. He was going to be like a traditional elf. And Elros decided that he would, be with the mortal men, and that he is so graciously given the gift of death that is said multiple times in this chapter of like, remember, Iluvatar made death. It feels like almost like they're gaslighting them and being like, oh yeah, this really like terrible thing that happens to your people that we have no experience with because like we don't have to die unless we're in battle or whatever. Like we don't have to experience death if we don't want to. But you guys do. And remember, it's a gift. It's a gift. Like this is a blessing. And I'm like, that sound like it feels very toxic to me.
Oh, that's funny. So that's where that's definitely where Tolkien's Catholicism is coming through, where it's just like, death actually is God's way of correcting the sin in the world and like removing you from it, and so you can be united with him. So it is a gift in that sense. So, but like obviously like there's no kind of like religious like groundwork in Tolkien's world, so it is just kind of like a blind faith thing. But that's definitely where like Tolkien's coming from in that for sure. Where it's just like actually no, this it's not so bad, death, it's pretty great.
No, death is a it's the kind of thing where it's like romanticizing death.
Yeah, it's like, part of life.
No, death is not like a romantic, beautiful thing. It's like, yeah, it is a part of life, but it's very tragic and awful. So anyway,
Rip.
So Elros, goes to be with the Edain that go to Numenor and becomes part of the Númenorians, and he is he their first king, or is he like just there? I can't remember.
He's the first king, and he lives extra long. It's like he lives like 500 years, where it's like, whoa, dude, like you totally took this whole like extended life thing like and ran with it. I think because it's like at some point there's like some like history of Middle Earth document or something, and it's like, oh, like the royalty lived for like 350 years on average, and like normal people lived for like 250 years on average. And he was like, oh, Elros is just like 500 years. Like, sounds pretty sweet.
He's like, well, if I can't live eternally, I guess I'll live for 500 years. Actually, you know what?
Half a millennium sounds good.
That sounds pretty good to me, because I don't think I would want to live forever. I don't want to be immortal, but also I don't want to have like my life be cut short. So I feel like 500 years, that's good. Like,
it's not short at all.
Yeah, that sounds good.
It's like he was taken from us too soon at 199. Oh gosh.
Do you watch Dairy Girls at all?
No, of it I have not watched it.
Oh my gosh, you should.
Obviously, Sister Declan's death was extremely shocking and unexpected. We're still struggling to understand exactly what happened. Yeah.
Can I just ask, what age was Sister Declan?
She'd have been 98 on Friday.
Right. Might that shed some light on the situation?
How so?
Does anybody else have any thoughts on the whole her being almost 98 years of age thing?
Struck down on her prime.
But yeah, because the Númenorians they're like, in this world, the more the like closer you are to, not geographically, but like the closer I guess spiritually you are to the elves in terms of like friendship and like having like good relationships and stuff, the longer your life is. And it's something that, like, the way I'm thinking about it is that like the men are like, the Númenorians are like the pure men, and they were like the blessed ones because they knew the elves. They fought on the good side. So that's why all of their lives are, their lifetimes have been extended. And then as Numenor progresses and continues, and there, you know, is growing contention, the lifelines start getting shorter, and they have like shorter and shorter lifespans. And I say shorter. One of them is like 200 years.
Yeah.
It's
Taken
still
from us too soon.
pretty long. Yeah.
What are you supposed to, I mean, like, honestly, who can accomplish anything in 200 years? Like, I get it. It's too short. It's too short.
He might as well have not been king at all. Like, just
I know.
give it to the next
What's the
guy.
point? What's the point?
So Numenor, they, you know, learn a lot of different crafts, and they learn most of all shipbuilding and seacraft, and become mariners and go on lots of adventures. But again, remember, they can't go to the west. They can't go too far west to Valinor. So they go to the east. And they eventually do land like on Middle Earth, and they like make journeys. It feels very much like, this feels really similar to the lessons on Christopher Columbus and the like Englishmen who came to America, you know, who founded the colonies. This feels very much like those lessons that I was taught in like 3rd and 4th grade, where they're like, oh, they landed and they met the Native Americans.
And they were all friends.
And they were friends, and they brought farming, and they taught the Native Americans how to plant corn and how to build houses, and that's what happens with the Númenorians when they land and they meet the men of Middle Earth. It says that they helped them to shake off the yoke. Men shook off the yoke of the offspring of Morgoth and unlearned their terror of the dark, because of what the Númenorians brought over to Middle Earth, and they like released them from this like terrible past.
Yeah, that's fair. I know, it is kind of funny, like, because I don't necessarily, like, I totally get it. I totally see a little bit of like, oh yeah, colonialism's like kind of cool, guys. But I don't know, I think it's because maybe it's like the men of like Tolkien's world just all seem so like homogenous for the most part, where it's just like, oh, this family, this family, this family, and then these guys are kind of bad. Where it's like more like, hey guys, like let me tell you about this dude Morgoth. He's not great. Where it's more kind of like helping out of more like family, or like extended family, than it is like a completely different group of people. But I definitely do see like the colonization into things too, where it's just like, hey, you guys, everything you're doing is not good. We're gonna have you do stuff our way.
Yeah.
And everything's gonna be okay. Or it's just like, oh, it's like that didn't really age that well. That's tough.
Yeah. Like I do think like what they did was genuinely helpful, and they did like genuinely, you know, in the beginning. Just funny read it. So this is like what it says. Coming among them, the Númenorians taught them many things. Corn and wine they brought, and they instructed men in the sowing of seed and the grinding of grain, in the hewing of wood and the shaping of stone, and in the ordering of their life, such as it might be in the lands of swift death and little bliss. Dang. Swift death and little bliss.
They're like, let me teach you agriculture. It might make this whole, you know, existence thing a little easier for you guys.
Yeah. Their like lives are much improved because of what the Númenorians have done for them.
Yeah. Luckily, it is like, at least in the beginning there, it is like a good faith thing where it's like, hey, we've got all these like cool tips and tricks. We can share that with you guys. So it's like, all right, that's nice. Let's just focus on that.
They do return back to Numenor because they're like, we're going back to our place. It's a lot better.
It's like, yeah, we have running water there. Sorry, guys.
Do you know that it's a It's from an episode of SpongeBob, but it's like used a lot as a TikTok sound. And it's Patrick going, "I wish I lived there." And SpongeBob goes,
Yep.
"Really?" And then there's a little pause, and then he goes, "No." So that's like the Numenorians in coming to Middle Earth and being like, "I wish I lived there."
No. They're like, yeah, this looks pretty nice. And then it's like, oh, you guys like, oh, you don't have corn yet? Like, you haven't
You don't
figured
have
out
food?
farming?
Yeah.
What? What do you do? Like, oh gosh. I know. Numenor sounds pretty great, honestly.
Yeah.
It's like, I feel like they would have indoor plumbing. Just Tolkien doesn't say it, but just in my heart, I'm like, yeah, they have toilets in Numenor. It's like, that sounds nice. I wouldn't want to leave that either.
Yeah.
They do. They have like little like fridges with like, oh yeah, I'm gonna get the fridge water. But like, I'm not drinking tap water. I'm a Numenorian.
Meanwhile, Numenor's been doing great, but they start to get a little jealous, a little greedy. It says that they began to hunger for the undying city that they saw afar, and the desire for everlasting life, to escape from death, and the ending of delight grew strong upon them. So they are looking more and more at the Valar, and they're like, "That sounds pretty good to me. Can you if you like us so much, can you like give us some of that? That sounds cool to like not have to like suffer like the greatest like tragedy that you can experience in life.
Rip.
Like, can we have some of that?" And these messengers go back over to Numenor. I mean, and also it's not even like, hey, we want to live eternally. It's like, can we just like come and hang out? Can we come visit y'all?
Like, it looks nice over there. Please.
Yeah, like it looks like it's cool here too, but like it looks really great over there. Can we come? Can we come hang?
We don't want to hang out with our weird, like, Eastern friends, our Eastern relatives.
So they send some messengers over to Numenor to talk to them and be like, and basically they're like, they're there and they're like making Numenor. They're like, nah, what you guys have going on here is really great. Like, why would you give up all of this? And they're basically just like, they're being asked all of these. This is when I like really started to get annoyed and frustrated by the Valar, and also like the elves too, of just like kind of it feels like very like arrogant, and that like, oh no, we know best, like we know better than you. You keep doing you and just trust us that like what we're telling you to do is the right decision.
That's fair. I feel like it would kind of honestly be hard not. It's like when you like talk to somebody that's just like, like when you are done being a teenager and then you talk to like a 14-year-old and the 14-year-old is just like, oh my gosh, I want to do this and this is going to be best for me and I'm going to do that and you can't tell me what to do. And you're just like, okay, actually, I do kind of know what's not like 100% what's best for you, but it's just like, yeah, don't do that. Like, trust me on this. Like, don't do that at school. Like, it's not going to end well, So it's like with being an elf and you're just like literally thousands of years old when you've got these uppity 500-year-olds being like, you can't tell me what to do. It's like, no, I can't, but I'm like, I've been around the block, or I get where that would be kind of hard not to be.
Yeah, that's also true. Yeah.
It's like, okay, actually, like, guys, I get it. You're like fully grown humans, but I'm also like multiply, like I'm like a million times older than you, and it's like it's not gonna end well. Like, don't do this.
Yeah.
Like, no. Like, darn teenagers.
The king asks, he's like, I also don't think this is fair because Erendil, my forefather who, I'm directly descended from, he's over there chilling with y'all. That doesn't seem fair to me. And they're basically like, well, Elros made his own decision to not be an elf and not have like eternity. So you're going to have to take that up with him.
It's like, sorry. I know. It's like one of those things. It's like, yeah, you can't. It's like it's like it sucks just that your ancestor made a decision you don't really agree with, but it's like, yeah, what are you gonna do about it? And it's like Arundel kind of like, honestly, I think he's got like the worst deal of all, because it's like he really is just separated from everyone. He's a star. It's like, and he's forced to be a star. It's like he can't die, so it's not like he can experience, Tolkien heaven, and he can't hang out in Valinor where his wife is and like the rest of his extended family is. He's like literally kind of just like in solitude for the rest of existence. So it's like I wouldn't use Arendelle as like this is like the standard, this is what we should have.
And so because of this like disagreement that they have and they like keep pushing back, the messengers are finally like, okay, but take warning. If you like keep going in this direction with this attitude, Eru, he's been like blessing you guys and protecting you, and he's given you all of these things. We can take it back. And like, be careful because he might.
Yeah, that's the parent talk. It's like, I put a roof over your head, It's like...
like, I brought you into this world and I can take you out.
Is that a threat, Mom? No.
Yeah. And so this is when the like divide starts growing in Numenor between I forget who they call it. What
it's like
the Kingsmen. That's
Mm-hmm.
it. And the Elendili, the elf friends. The fact that the elf friends and the faithful also like how like it's really funny. Like that's the most biased way ever to like paint like, okay, there are these two sides in this land. There are two sides of people. There's the Kingsmen and the faithful. And it's like, okay, but which one do you think we like more? Like, which one is right? And it's like, well, obviously you think it's the faithful, like, because the Silmarillion is written from the perspective of the elves. So like them writing this history being like, yeah, so there were the Kingsmen and they went against us and they didn't believe us. And then there were the faithful. These were the good guys.
2 thumbs up from the elves. I know you do. It is funny when you do remember that the Silmarillion does have that like elf bias, and that's like, and then Tolkien's just like, yeah, that's totally a thing. Like, yeah, Pendeloth wrote that, and he's kind of a punk, and I'm like, oh, I love it. I love just like the extra like little nuggets of world building there. Mm-hmm. But yeah, boo those like stupid humans that were like, death doesn't sound all that great. They suck.
And also knowing that they were also like originally called the Elendili, were the name of their of this group of people that were like with the elves. And then in the show, there's a moment where Miriel is talking to Elendil and is like, hey, I need to know like who's like, are you like gonna defend her or not? And because she's like, so like, what's your name again? And he's like, Elendil. It means like born of the star or something. And she's like, yeah, but it also means elf friend. So like knowing that like they were originally called like the Elendili, I understand why Muriel was so like sus of him originally.
Just like, no, you don't name yourself, but yeah,
but
a little on the nose, don't you think?
Yeah.
That is pretty great.
Where was it? Yeah, so they keep having this division. It says the kings, for the kings and their people had not yet abandoned wisdom, and if they loved the Valar no longer, at least they still feared them. And I'm like, that's so toxic. Like, what a toxic relationship to have.
It's like, yeah, no, they're like really great sometimes, but I just don't ever make them mad, and it's okay and everything works out. Oh gosh, I know. It's like the Valar, they really are interesting because they do just kind of give off like first time parent energy where it's like, we're not quite sure what we're doing, and are we setting strict enough guidelines? Are we being too strict? I don't think so, but there's like no interest, like introspection or like figuring it out. It's like, well, because I said so. Like, that should be good enough for you. And it's just like, yeah, we totally nailed it.
Yeah, and then like and then like those are the kids that grow up and then they like go no contact with their parents,
Yeah, it's like, I don't understand what I ever did. Why don't they talk to me? I was a great parent.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, yeah, I gotta kind of feel bad for the Valar in that sense.
So this is, remember when I said like, oh yeah, they go over to Middle Earth and like you kind of get like, it kind of sounds like a little colonizer vibes, but like, no, it actually did start with good intentions. Now it actually is like colonizer vibes, because they go back over to Middle Earth. And it says, but they appeared now rather as lords and masters and gatherers of tribute than helpers and teachers. So now they're going over to Middle Earth with these like bad intentions of like, no, we're here to conquer. We're here to like collect resources. We're here to like take over, and we're here to tell you what to do. It points out, it says, in all this, the elf friends had small part. So it's like pointing out, it's like, remember, the faithful, the people who liked the elves, they had no part of this. They did the right thing.
That is like a nice little like nugget, though. I'm like, okay, I don't feel so bad though. They were fine. They didn't do the war crimes. They didn't do war crimes. We're just gonna slip that in there.
Yeah, they didn't do. Yeah,
one or two of them might have, but the vast majority, they're okay.
Generations of kings are coming along, and like throughout this, it's saying like, oh, the 20th king, the 25th king, and remember they're living for 200, 300, sometimes 500 years, depending on like how far back you go. This is thousands of years in the future. And we get to a point where there is this one king who forces marriage to this woman who was from a family of the faithful. And this guy was of the Kingsmen. And they have 2 sons. Notice how I'm not saying any of these names, by the way. And this is on purpose because they're all gibberish. It's like Inziladun and Gimilcad.
You're doing amazing, sweetie.
The first son, the elder, took after his mother and was on the like faithful side. The second son was more like the dad, part of the Kingsmen side. And it says that like had the king, if he had a choice, he would have given the crown over the reign over to the second son. But obviously, like, that's not how it goes here. The first son, who is part of the faithful, becomes king. Oh, I forgot to mention, at some point in the creation of Numenor and like the friendship with the elves and the Valar, they get a tree that is in likeness of the trees of Valinor. So again, Tolkien and his trees.
Loves them.
And so they plant this tree in Numenor, and it's a very special tree. And so this king, who is now king, he is part of the faithful, and he starts tending the tree again. And that's how earlier it mentioned that the tree stopped being tended to by the Kingsmen. And it's like, that's how you know things are getting bad, is when the fancy tree, the nice tree, stops being neglected. Tended to. Yeah. So he returns to the tree and starts like trying to, show it attention again. And he prophesies that when the tree perished, so also would the line of the kings come to its end. So we have a tree prophecy. I feel like, again, it's not the first time.
It's like it's rhyming. It's rhyming for sure.
Again, this is brought up and talked about in season 1 of Rings of Power too. So he's like trying to repair this relationship with the Valar, but it says that it was like too little too late. And also the Valar know that like he does not represent all of his people when he's saying like, no, can we be friends again? So it's not working. He dies. He does not have any children.
He does.
Oh, he does?
He just has a daughter.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, he has. Mm-hmm. Oh, that's right. That's right. So his brother Gimilcad has a son. The faithful king has one daughter. He dies. And it does say that she is like perfectly in her right to get the throne. So it's like, okay, good for Numenor. Like they're not, they're like, hey, women's rights too.
Yeah, so she should have been the 4th queen of Numenor. But
yeah, I respect that. So his daughter is named Miriel. Again, that sounds very familiar to Rings of Power watchers. Yeah, and it says, to her now, by right and the laws of Numenor, came the scepter. So I do appreciate that. Like, they're like, no, it doesn't matter if it was a boy or a girl. It just goes to the firstborn.
Very progressive of Numenor.
Yeah. However, the king's brother's son is Pharazôn. Again, familiar name.
So Muriel's cousin.
Yes.
Her first cousin.
This is where it gets like big yikes energy. Pharazôn took her to wife against her will, doing evil in this, and evil also in that the laws of Numenor did not permit... Oh, wait, hang on, I've read that wrong. And evil also in that the laws of Numenor did not permit the marriage, even in the royal house, of those more nearly akin than cousins in the second degree. So it's like not only they're like, okay, first of all, it's really not cool that like you forced her to marry you against her will. That's not cool. And second of all, you guys are first cousins. That's a big yikes.
It's like you are breaking all of the laws.
Yeah.
Man-made and divine. You are breaking laws. Oh,
real quick, I also want to mention, so the faithful king, he like renamed himself Tar Palantir or Palantir, however you want to say it. And I'm like,
tomato tomato.
Is that like I'm like, oh, does he like invent the Palantir, or is that just a coincidence, or is it later called the Palantir because he made this prophecy about the tree? So yeah, I don't know.
Do you want an answer for that?
If it's going to be answered in the remainder of the Silmarillion, you don't have to tell me, but if I'm never going to find out, otherwise, go ahead.
I don't think it's spoiled. Basically, Fëanor, everyone's favorite jerk, he's the one that made the Palantir. There's 7 of them. So I think with Tar Palantir, it's more just like, it's just alluding like linguistically to the fact that he had like farsight, because that's basically what the Palantir did. It's just a language thing, but he doesn't really have anything to do with the Palantir.
Okay, well, here I was being like, ooh. Anyway,
I love that though. That's some cool creativity coming out there, trying to figure that out. But yeah, no,
that's literally just how I feel. That's all I would do reading Tolkien is be like, oh, I noticed this word was used or this name or whatever, and I'll be like, does that mean blah 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 blah? And then my guess is always like, that's a really great guess. And I'm like, oh, so no, I was wrong.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, no, Fëanor did it. Sorry. But that's cool though. I never put those 2 and 2 together. I was just like, oh, that's like same name. Cool.
Yeah. This is what like I don't understand. I'm like, how can you, like, if she's like by law their queen, how can he like just take over and is like, no, I'm gonna marry you, and guess what, I'm gonna be the king instead. I'm gonna be the ruling leader here. Like, I don't understand how you can just do that and how like everyone else went along with it.
I know, and I think that would have been like a cool, I mean, I'm sure the show probably will address it, and like just seeing like, yeah, like how did that get accomplished, because like legally it doesn't seem like it could be one of those things. Like I can't just like walk over to like, you know, Buckingham Palace and be like, oh, I'm gonna marry Harry or whatever, you know, he's already married, you know. And it's like, oh yeah, I mean, we're just gonna have to let her do it, like we're just gonna, but I wonder, yeah, it's like one of those things.
I mean, then again, illegal things happen all the time, so
yeah it was probably a coup. It's like yeah, no, I'm like I'm a legit king, you know, technically, you know, I don't know. But yeah, it sucks for Muriel, which it's like, again, I like her characterization in the show that she did have a little bit more agency, and she was queen regent. So it's like, that's cool. It's like, it's like, hey,
maybe because I don't know, you know, we'll find out in the next half of the Akallabeth what happens to Muriel, but in the show, again, spoiler alert if you haven't been watching or don't plan to watch or whatever, she goes blind. So maybe that's how this will come out, you know, in the future of Numenor in Rings of Power. Maybe like Pharazôn takes over because she's gone blind, and they're like, oh no, you're, you know, like, you need help. I'm gonna help you. I'm gonna lead our people now. Because like, oh yeah, blind people can't do anything. Not true at all, you know.
I know that could be it's like that could be the angle they're going for.
In their mind, they're like, oh well, she's blind, so she's powerless now, and we have to have a new leader. So maybe that's their opening to do that. I don't know.
That's so funny. It's like, how are we supposed to do anything when she can't see anything? It's like, well, I can still like, I'm still
think
me.
and talk and
Yeah,
like my brain is
be a
still the
leader.
same. Yeah. I just like,
like, oh,
you just
God.
need to, the main difference is just that like when someone walks in a room, you need to announce who it is. Like that's it.
But she's like, walk very heavy so I can hear your footsteps, and then we're good. It's like,
And,
we're
like, that's
fine.
the main
Nothing
thing.
changes. Nothing changes.
Like you might need to read some things out loud to me because I'm assuming Numenor hasn't invented Braille. So
They have. That's like they're that like on top of it. They're like, we have toilets and we have Braille. We're good.
Oh my God, that is true. Yeah, if they have indoor plumbing.
They're just progressive.
This is also kind of like the last little, I don't know, to me, like evil thing. Pharazôn changes her name to Zimrafel. So he changed, it's not like, because it does say throughout this part so far that there are kings who, a lot of them have like an elven name or that, they have like multiple names or when they become king, they change it to something else. So it's not out of the question that when she becomes queen that she changes her name to something else. But it's the fact that it says the name of his queen he changed to Zimrafel.
Yeah. And also he changed it to, so basically all of the like good kings, like quote unquote, like the ones who were like more akin with the elves, they had the tar, so they went with like the Quenya, like high, like tar means high, and then he changed it to the Manish, like that Undunic name. So it's like, even though her father was on the like, hey, let's go back to the elven tradition of naming us. He's like, yeah, no, screw that, like we're doing man all the way, like because we're the coolest. So it's like, it's just like not cool for like multiple reasons.
Yes, exactly.
Not cool, Pharazôn.
Not cool. So cool. That's where we're gonna leave the Akallabeth for this week, and we will come back next week to Pharazôn everything up, I'm assuming.
There you go. Nicely peppered in. I know.
Yes, yeah. We've got like a little, it's set up now. He's the ruler, and then again, since this section is titled "The Downfall of Numenor," I guess we'll see that happen. So
I'm sure he does a great job.
Yeah, I'm sure nothing bad happens. We're off to a great start. He forced his first cousin to marry him, and then took over the throne and forced her to change her name. I'm sure it's fine.
He's crushing it. He's just doing he's girl bossing.
Yes.
He's just getting it done. But oh gosh, it's funny, really quick. There's an alternate version of the Akallabeth that Tolkien wrote, because that's another thing when you get into this. There's like
of course he wrote like multiple versions.
Yes, but yeah, it's so fun. But one of them, Muriel is like fully on board with like doing the mayhem thing. She's just like,
okay, you know what? That I support. Because at least then
it's the evil queen arc. She's like,
at least then
let's
it's
go.
her choice, Pretty
much. I think she still like is not a big fan of like Pharazôn, but she's like, you want to do this, I want to do the same thing. Let's do it together, kind of a thing. So she's less of a like kind of like damsel in distressy kind of vibe. But like the alternative is, it's like, okay, it's like, all right, you're gonna have like zero agency, or you're gonna be like full on like
evil queen. It's like, what do you want to do? Yeah. Remember, on this podcast, not only do we support women's rights, we also support women's wrongs.
Yeah, there we go. So I do like the characterization in the show where it's like, no, we're gonna give you more stuff to do, sis. Mm-hmm. Like don't worry about it. And I think that'll like make the sting of her eventually getting that taken away hit a little bit harder, but we're not gonna go full on evil.
Well, Morgan, thank you so much for joining me to talk about, I'm nearing the end of the Silmarillion, finally.
You got this.
So, and it's even more interesting to read this part, especially since like this was like, I mean, not directly in Rings of Power, but like I had some exposure to it previously through the show. So it was like really interesting to read this section. And thank you for joining me, and thank you for creating your wonderful art. Where can people find you on the internet?
You can find me on Instagram at Silmaspens, and I'm also on the Tumblrs. I'm still love Tumblr. Also at Silmaspens. Haven't been drawing anything for a minute, but I mean, I'll probably come back pretty soon. Just in a little bit of an art hiatus right now. But yeah, thank you so much for having me on the show. This was super fun. It's just been great watching somebody just like being very open about going through Tolkien for the first time. A lot of people like to be like, oh no, like actually I like this isn't my first time. I like know so much about this already. Like nobody likes to admit like they just
no, I know nothing, and I'm not afraid of saying it.
And it's like so refreshing because it's like it's so fun just to be able to like experience that through like somebody else. Like, oh yeah, like you don't know this part yet. Like this is cool. Like this is coming for you. So that's great. Like thanks for doing what you're doing. Love it, and thank you again for having me on the show. Appreciate it.
That's What I'm Talking About is a proud member of WBNE. If you want to learn more about the network, you can go to wbne.org. The cover art is by Vaishon Brandon. You can support him on Instagram at Vaishon Designs. If you want to get merch for That's What I'm Talking About, you can go to tpublic.com/user/talkingaboutpod. You can follow the podcast on social media at TolkienAboutPod. And you can follow me on Twitter at MCWattsUp and on Instagram at MCTurnDownForWhat. If you want to support the podcast, you can become a patron. Go to patreon.com/TolkienAboutPod to see the different levels of support and perks that are available. You can become a member of the Discord server for just $3 a month. That is less than your holiday Starbucks drink of choice. This past week, we had an interesting conversation about what is the best TV show, like the most like well constructed or like the best written. I made a case for The Good Place. If you have been a longtime listener, I think you know that I firmly believe The Good Place is the most well constructed television show ever created. Anyway, but you can participate in conversations like that in our Discord server. It's a great place to be. Or you can become a sponsor of the podcast like Josh. Josh, thank you so much for your continued support of the podcast. You have been a supporter since October 2020. Dang, boy, that's a long time. I appreciate that. That's amazing. That's outstanding. And that just means so much to me. So thank you. Do you have any parting words for the audience?
Enjoy Tolkien. Just enjoy it. Enjoy other people who love Tolkien. It's like some people might like something you don't necessarily love. Like if you see somebody who like absolutely loves the TV show or like loves the Hobbit movies or something, it's like, that's great. Let them do their thing. If you see somebody that's like a weird book purist and only likes their version of like something where it's like, oh, this is how I think about it. It's how I do it. Like, cool, whatever. Like, let them like that unless they're being a dork. You know, I think that's just it. Just like let people enjoy Tolkien however they want to enjoy it. You know, super, super deep stuff. You know, no one's ever said that before.
And that's what I'm talking about.